strategy. But I just want to say first, thanks to Steve and Jason for giving us the opportunity, first-time denters, to join you. The run has been fantastic, and we're honored to have met many of you and to have spent 2 days in these mile repeats where we run fast and then we socialize a little bit and then run faster. So good afternoon. We're in the last lap of the race. My name is Bob. This is Gordon. We got a stack we're going to run you through, and really our goal is share stories, lessons learned, and practical application in the all-important domain of strategic innovation. Before we get started, though, I want to show a picture of our team because we're representatives of a team in Holland, Michigan. There you see them marching down the high street. And that team, when we launched in 2001, was really an experiment of combining the skills of great design with great technology and great strategists. So that team is compressed and operating out of a collaborative space. We're encouraged that many of our clients, coast to coast, willingly volunteer to come to Holland. And the goal being to get out of maybe the typical domain that they're in and work in an environment that is truly collaborative, filled with a lot of natural light, and dynamic in the domain of innovation. So with that, let's get headed into...
Can we get our notes, please? This is black down here.
Who needs notes?
I'm ready to roll.
All right, let's go.
So here we go. Slide number 1. And really the title of the presentation was, Are We Out of Big Ideas? That was an article released late last year in the Wall Street Journal. And the premise that they were asking is that potentially big ideas, lack thereof, a part of our hidden economic challenge today. And so the article went on to point out that since 2000, they were representing data points that would indicate innovation has reached a plateau, somewhat stagnant in growth and application. And certainly knowing this audience and knowing the team that we represent, when you hear that question, are we out of big ideas, the loud answer is, no way. Come on, man, as they would say on ESPN Monday Night Football. We have plenty of ideas. And this first visual is just pointing out the 4% over 5%. We've only explored 4% of our universe. We got a good update on that exploration and that innovation activity happening today or yesterday. And certainly we've only explored 5% of our oceans and our seas. So I think using that as the backdrop, the environmental stature of our country today, you'd say, no, there's plenty of room for more big ideas. And really, I think the question that might be asked is perhaps we're running a little bit low on imagination. And at the bedrock to any innovative solution that is successfully commercialized, I think we would argue, our point of view would be that imagination lies at the bedrock. So no way are we out of big ideas, and we hope to share some of that story with you this afternoon without any notes on our teleprompter.
No images either.
So we're going to be innovative.
Yes, let's do it.
So here we go, innovation over commodity. Pretty simple slide, simple graphic. You might sit there and ask yourself, where am I and where is my organization? Am I above the waterline or am I submerged in the domain of commodity? I think we all know, we'd all argue, even economists would agree that a strategy that leaves you below the waterline is not viable economically long term. We as a firm are working day in and day out to help our clients maintain that position. The point I want to make with you this afternoon is the HBR study done in 2015 cited that only 9% of public or private companies are doing any kind of serious innovation. And you might sit there and you might say, no way, that can't be. But at least this report, even if they were off by half, you would say the margin of companies that are fixated and pursuing innovation on a daily basis is a pretty small number. And so my encouragement, and I think through this presentation today, like a coach in the gym, your personal trainer, we just want to encourage you to honestly assess where you're at and pursue that domain of innovation with all of your heart.
So we'd like to share what we've experienced and what we've learned. We're not saying it's the end all to every single problem, but there are lessons learned over 15 years, 30 years of a career, 15 years as a small firm. One thing we've learned that smart companies do is they understand the power of the dashboard. The dashboard is kind of like the so what of IoT. And we see it in Hollywood films, we see it in automotive, we see it on our own computer screens and so forth. We are literally have an insatiable appetite for these beautiful digital dashboards. But could you imagine actually living your life staring at that all day, every day? It could be, at minimum, overwhelming. But we do see these dashboards in our everyday normal life, and we love them, and we lean on them, and we crave more of them, and so forth. But in the innovation space, the dashboard that we pay the most attention to is this one. This is the innovation tachometer. We're using the face of a child, but you could easily superimpose the face of any age, any gender, any race, and so forth. When we see something that is new and surprising and delightful, people have spoken of it today, we have an automatic reaction to it. And as a firm, we try really hard not to get too enamored in tech. I mean, 2/3 of our staff are double E's. It's very easy to get mired in the how, but this is the what. This is the punchline. This is what it's all about. And someone else showed this slide earlier this week, which was great for us. This has been on our wall for 15 years. And one of the reasons it's been on our wall is that we view ourselves as bridge builders. And to see a bridge in process, we have actually several different kinds of bridges in process. And it's a constant reminder to us of what our job is, half mountain guide, half bridge builder, helping our clients in a wide range of different spaces get from here to there. And sometimes they had an amazing innovation and they rode it for a really long time, and maybe they waited a little bit too long and it's past noon and it's getting towards sunset for that innovation. It's now a commodity. They've forgotten how to innovate. They forgot the process. They lost the courage and so forth. And that's oftentimes when we get called in, because this is all that we do each and every day.
Smart companies not only are bridge builders, they're also equally balanced, meaning they have one foot in the present and equally weighted another foot in the future. And Steve, in his introduction, referred to the HBR case study, talking about the ambidextrous organization done a decade and a half ago. But that's really the point of this quote that lives on the wall of one of our clients' R&D campus. Operational excellence secures today. Innovation excellence secures the future. And so as leaders, to be equally balanced and weighted in whatever organization you may be in, service, product, nonprofit, having that perspective and that balance is paramount for long-term innovative success.
All right, so we're going to talk about a couple of case studies, and I thought this would be a lot of fun, and it relates back to something that I've personally experienced fairly recently. So many of you, some of you may have even owned this thing. I did when it first came out. It changed my running experience. In fact, I'll confess, I've run with music since 1981. And every year, I've bought a new set of headphones because they break every single year. They damage from water and so forth. And this amazingly innovative product was surpassed by multiple different technologies, obviously, and so forth. But what I want to focus on is the headphone itself. It didn't change much for 20 years. There wasn't a lot of actual innovation in the headset until for 20 years. Interestingly, in about 2007, a client came to us and asked us to solve a wicked problem. The wicked problem was, how do you coach people underwater? How do you train Olympic athletes when they're underwater for 2 hours a day during training? How do you feed them data? How do you feed them metrics? So we co-invented the first system and the first underwater phone call that coaches can make live to one athlete or a group or 100 athletes at once, feeding them information to encourage real-time change. So going from being a headphone buff to designing one that has to live underwater all day, every day, that was a fun challenge. But really what I want to talk about is this. I had thought that the earbud, I mean, where else could it go? It's been around forever. This white, they almost give them away with products now, right? And we recently saw that Apple launched this magnificent new product with a revolutionary new digital handshake. We actually have to design products that pair with each other, you know, a desk and a chair, a car and a phone, and so forth. That's a difficult process. I have endured, and we all have, pairing a Bluetooth headset to your phone and this funny little digital dance and so forth. The first time I opened this package and opened the little dental floss container, and it instantaneously paired for me and then gave me status of my charge, they revolutionized a totally commoditized product. And I think that's worth noting. Another innovation success story. Remember these blue crystals that you may have seen in your parents' shed and so forth for flowers and lawn work, right? I mean, how commoditized can you be? A toxic-looking blue crystal that you're not supposed to touch, and you only use like half a teaspoon for 5 gallons of water, right? This company recently came out with a product like this. They went from the shed, from a commodity in the shed, to the kitchen counter. They went from a seasonal product to a year-round product. They went from a product for adults to a product for kids and families and so forth, and it's fun. They created a digital ecosystem, and you buy pods online, and it's really fun, and you nurture these little seedlings, and you harvest lettuce, and you eat it together as a family. That's a revolutionary innovation in my book, specifically for the company that it came from. Incidentally, we're working with another company on the East Coast that's taking that basic idea to the next level, and they're using algorithms to modify the flavor profiles of food. So if you're a chef and you don't want to just grow basil, you want to grow basil your way. You want to grow it with a different flavor profile. You want to grow it at a different time frame and so forth. So they're literally creating an environment that allows chefs to tailor their food to their likings before they even cut it and so forth. It's really fantastic. You'll see more of this in the near future. All right, the other innovation story I'm going to tell you about is we were approached by a Fortune 100, one of the most admired companies in the nation. They asked us to reimagine the home thermostat in the year 2010. What you're looking at is kind of our inside joke in our firm. We viewed these things as anonymous white chocolate bars. They lived on the wall of our home. If you were to dare to open the lid and look at the 50 chiclets with 3-point font on them to program them, which no one ever did, it was just a mess, right? They were almost giving these things away. They were in the commodity basement, right? Zero desirability, totally commoditized, zero usability, and so forth. So we were hired to reimagine this product. We did our normal human-centered design thinking. They all kind of mean the same thing. We talked to stakeholders. We performed assessments. We created new concepts. We tested our concepts internally. We did a little external vetting with our concepts with dealers, and we came up with what we thought was a revolutionary new idea. In fact, it terrified our client. They were excited but scared at the same time. And I remember one day, we had the final presentation to the leadership team on a cold, rainy day in mid-October, and we showed them this. And they were buying off on it. They were beginning to imagine that it actually launched something that would look like this, something that was round and familiar looking, kind of like a volume knob, kind of like a BMW Rondell, kind of like HAL 9000, if you have any Space Odyssey fans here. I mean, all of that visual brand language all convened into one, and only showing relevant data, and not programmed at the site, programmed with your phone or your computer and so forth. We weren't going to have a trapdoor with chiclets and everything. That was a revolutionary idea. 2 weeks later, this product came out. Ouch. That stung. I mean, it was a huge compliment, and it was actually a giant kick in the gut. Our project ended. It was over. In fact, our relationship with that client shortly after that ended. They were amazed that we couldn't have known that this was coming, but none of us had any idea that this was coming. So yeah, kind of a compliment, kind of not a compliment. The big idea, the takeaway for us was speed, right? If you're thinking of something right now, if you're enamored with a vision, don't assume that nobody else is too. I mean, I've talked to Tony Fadell personally about this at a conference, and I told him the story, and he was interested in the story. He was actually more interested in the fact that when it came out and I bought one, I had my daughters install it in my home. So this thing that only a technical person could install, I handed the instructions to my kids and I had them install it successfully. He begged me for a video. He said, will you go back and reenact that? I want to use that.
Awesome. Another case study. Here's a client, 70-year-old, a manufacturer of material handling equipment known as HighLows or lift trucks. They produce them and distribute them all over the globe. What you see here is a shot of a warehouse picker. He's an athlete. He gets paid on how much he can move in an 8-hour shift and get out the door at an Amazon or at a Walmart. The problem statement here is how can technology be used to create a safer environment for the warehouse picker? They were known for, in the spirit of speed, jumping out of those lift trucks in order to go to the inventory and grab something off the shelf and allow the gliding function of the lift truck to continue to move forward. Not safe when you're talking about a 3,000-pound device, and there were safety incidents as a result. So our journey was really motivated by safety. You see the result. It's a wearable product. So wearable technology now worn by the athlete gives him the ability to advance that lift truck from behind. There's sensors embedded in the truck, and there's proprietary radio protocol integrated into that glove and a go button. So during a 1,000-foot-long march down an Amazon aisleway, he's walking behind the lift truck and grabbing the items and then putting them on the skid to get them out the door quickly. What we didn't know until we got into the development journey, and this is the surprise of strategic innovation, we ended up creating a solution that removed or minimized footsteps taken by that picker by a volume of 70%. So a 70% reduction of steps by these athletes was achieved, and that allowed this client to go to the marketplace with intellectual property and with a solution that nobody else in their competitive field had, and charged twice as much for a lift truck because of that feature and that function. So again, case study on even when you get into innovation and you're solving one problem, many times you highlight and solve other problems too. Then one last example, and this is Internet of Things, IoT. How many of you are in the midst of IoT opportunities in your organization? This was our firm taking our first swing at launching a separate company. The company's called Twisthink. We launched it in 2009. HDM stands for High Density Mesh. And we went to market in the exciting space of parking garages. Yeah, fire up. Come on. And now you're going to fire up when I tell you. The product name? Limelight. Here we are in the Limelight conference room. Here we are next to the Limelight Hotel. I think it's destiny that we're going to bring Limelight to Sun Valley in the next year. That's our goal, having camped out here for a couple of days. But really, what did we do? We're giving light fixtures in the outdoor environment, so parking garages, parking lots, city parks, we're giving them a brain. And you can actually control those lights from the power of your web. So a desktop, a laptop, a smartphone, you can now control lights, and the selling proposition is all about energy savings. So when lights need to be on, they're on. When lights can be dimmed to secure an energy savings, they can be dimmed, but they're responsive. So there's an energy savings, there's a maintenance advantage. When a light goes down, the appropriate personnel at the municipality, at the university, or at the corporation get an email alert advising them which garage needs attention because of a down light. And then there's a safety story. Perpetrators hang out in parking garages. And part of their strategy is to knock out lights. So we have proprietary algorithms that would say, hey, when two lights go out that are next to each other, that's a different kind of issue. That might not be a maintenance issue. So those notes, those messages can be routed in a different fashion, all for the safety and the security of the patrons. We have deployments coast to coast, municipalities and universities and private owners, and even our nation's capital. The Transportation Authority has deployed Limelight in all of their parking garages in DC. Those of you from San Francisco, we're coming to San Francisco this year. We're going to do 3 garages via BART. So we're excited by the journey that this innovation or Internet of Things has driven for the firm Twist HDM. So how can you innovate better? And so you've heard already bantered in our presentation and other presentations this notion of HCD. Not sure how many are familiar with that 3-letter acronym, human-centered design. And the whole premise behind it is putting the stakeholder, putting the customer at the center. You can view HCD as a process, as tools, as practice. That's the scaffolding that goes around the stakeholders. But having a strong commitment to HCD is one way that any organization can make an impact via strategic innovation. We did a survey last year, interestingly. Only 20% of the C-suite in companies across our country knew what that 3-letter acronym stood for and what it meant. So in the domain of innovation, that's a problem. Here's kind of an outline, an innovation paradigm, and if you start with HCD and the Venn diagram that's traditionally viewed as representing HCD, it starts with technical feasibility, business viability, and user or desirability. And the overlap of those 3 lenses is the art of HCD. Traditional companies are typically driven by economics. So it's all about ROI. That other 3-letter acronym tends to get the most attention within organizations large. In the startup world, it's usually all about tech fees. It's, hey, I got a patent. How do I now commercialize this patent for my commercial success and good? And the customer many times is minimized or overlooked, and I think our point of view would be smart companies place the appropriate emphasis on usability and desirability first and allow that to lead and allow that to drive technical feasibility and business viability. So the process isn't a linear one. It's more like a perpetual motion machine. And so it starts with HCD, and then you see it swing around into implementation, and then you don't stop after you launch. You get right back around into HCD again, and you keep that perpetual motion machine in action. Stopping only will lead to your falling below the line and into the commodity space. The other key part of HCD is making it visible. So there you see glimpses of our team in action, but the whole priority behind having a visible process, one that's not hidden or tucked away in a binder, but it's visible to the team and to the organization and to your clients, is another way to help drive that thinking that results in innovation.
Another point, something else that can help you innovate better. I have a question. How many people, by show of hands, have read or even heard of the book Setting the Table by Danny Myers? Couple? Okay, cool. So I went into a restaurant in New York City about 3 years ago and had an experience, and I walked out and I didn't know why. I knew something remarkable had happened, but I didn't know how it happened. And I was really curious. And that's an essential ingredient, obviously, in innovation and so forth. So I went online and I found out who founded the restaurant, I found out its history, and I found out this guy had written a book. So I bought the book and I read the book. And then I had an epiphany because he makes this point that there is this massive gap between service and hospitality. And I'll confess, 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of thought of them as the same thing. I lumped them into the same bucket, right? And what we've seen with our clients is they kind of view imagination, creativity, and innovation as a thing, like a ball of string. It's all knotted together. And seeing Danny Myers effectively drive this wedge between hospitality and service and enlighten us as a firm, and we as a firm studied that book together to do a better job for our clients and to be better designers, frankly. So it inspired us to view what we do quite a bit differently. So instead of talking about innovation, which is all everybody does these days, we thought it was important to spend some time camping out in the realm of imagination. Einstein in 29 said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Actually, what he said, if you get the full quote, was, as an artist, I draw freely on my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Imagination encircles the world. He's implying that's unlimited. So when we show that 4% over 5%, it's kind of a visual reminder to us, the fact that our imaginations are the limiting factor of what we can create and so forth. And so the next phase is creativity. That's sort of like mid-camp. We've got base camp as imagination, and as a firm, we do things proactively to foster the imaginations of adults. And let's face it, kids don't need that. Kids wake up each and every day with an amazing new idea in their head, and they walk around and they share it, and they're so humble, they shamelessly exercise their imaginations. Adults oftentimes don't. Adults in the business world and the corporate world oftentimes don't. So the point of this is that if you have to acknowledge something and value it, and then you have to nurture it, and you have to do it consciously. The same thing is true with creativity. Creativity is a skill. Creativity is a set of tools, and it's an aptitude, and it's a skill, and it has to be exercised, and it's different than imagination. I know imaginative people that are not creative. I know creative people that are not very imaginative and so forth. And so when you're building a team, you want to make sure that you have all the bases covered. And then innovation is the summit, and we all know how great it is to get to the summit, but we also know how fleeting those summits can be. And back to the Mobius strip, right? Most people, when talking in terms of literal mountain climbing, you get to the top, you snap a few pictures, a couple of high fives, and you hustle back down because you don't hang out on the summit all that long, right? And you get to do it again. So our encouragement is that if you remember one number from this presentation at all, it's this 9% number. And make sure that your firm, you as an individual, the people you hang out with, the conversations that you have are all about joining this 9% club. I want to make one comment about this. Embrace difficult and fear easy. We work with a lot of clients that will naturally gravitate towards, oh, that looks like a good solution, that looks easy, we can implement that. And we have to like slap their hand and say, no, that is the last thing, we have to kill that reflex, right? That's rotten, spoiled fruit, don't go for it. It'll trip you up. And embrace the idea of pursuing difficult things because they will inspire your team, they will inspire your clients and your customers, and they will give you a competitive advantage. So last point I want to make here is that innovation is a journey. It's important to enjoy the journey. The best way to predict the future and not become a victim to it is to proactively help create a bold, intentional future with leadership.
Okay, so 4 quick summary points. 1, join the club, as Gordon just highlighted. 2, create your own IoT narrative. Now is the time. It's a great opportunity. Go for it. 3rd point, invest and engage with industrial design, the power of design thinking. That visionary skill, again, whether you're a service company, an investment bank, or a widget company, that skill will have a dramatic impact on your endeavor, on your vision. Go for it. And then finally, the 4th point, have a visible process. Put it on the wall. Use it to inspire and direct your own teams as you pursue this lofty space.
Last thing I want to say is that we all study what we value. We were asked to put up a couple of books that we thought added value to the conversation about innovation and so forth. Here are a few of them. Setting the Table has been mentioned already. Anybody who doesn't know anything about HCD, front-end innovation, design thinking, there is a book at the far left that will overwhelm you with methods and so forth. As a firm, we don't use 101 methods. We have access to them, but we really use maybe 20, 25 different methods and so forth. So it's not important that you memorize them all and become an expert in them all and so forth. But these are some books that have been valuable to us, valuable to our team. We read them together as a team and so forth.
So finally, great quote. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. So it really points back to build a great team, create a vision, a bold vision, and go make a dent. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.